Okay, so let's get to the meat and potatoes of the show today. So we had a huge story drop. And by the way, it's fascinating that Jennifer said this on the same day that this article came out. So I doubt it was premeditated or planned. So we had a big story drop yesterday. And so Patty Jenkins is one of the best filmmakers, women filmmakers that is out there in today's world. I mean, she directed Charlize Theron to an Oscar in Monster. She, did a fantastic movie in the first Wonder Woman. And so she basically had Wonder Woman 3 all set to go. And yesterday, DC decided that they were no longer going to move forward with Wonder Woman 3. And this was a huge shakeup. And, of course, as we all know, James Gunn and Peter Safran just took over no more than a month ago. And so the Hollywood Reporter actually came out with this article first. And I want to read James Gunn's tweet, because I think it's fascinating to get his perspective too. And it's in the article, but I wanted to read the whole thing. So he said, as far as yesterday in the Hollywood Reporter, some of it is true, some of it is half true, and some of it is not true. Of some of it, we haven't decided whether it's true or not. And he went on to say, although the first month of DC has been fruitful, building the next 10 years of story takes time, and we're just beginning. Peter and I, Peter Safran, as I just made mention, chose to helm DC Studios knowing we were coming into a fractionist environment, both in the studio, being told, and in the audience itself. And there would be an unavoidable transitional period as we moved into telling a cohesive story across film, television, animation, and gaming, which actually is an interesting thing. We'll get to that in a few minutes. But in the end, the drawback that transitional period was dwarfed by the creative possibilities and the opportunity to build upon what had worked in DC so far, to help rectify what is not. We know we are not going to make every single person happy every step of the way, but we can promise everything we do is done in the service of the story, and that's in capital letters, in the service of the DC characters, which is also in capital letters. We know you cherish and have cherished your whole lives. As for more answers about the future of the DCU, I will sadly have to ask you to wait. We are giving these characters the stories, the time, and the attention they deserve, and we ourselves still have a lot of questions to ask and answer. So that was James Gunn's full tweet that he put out, and that was in the article too. But here's the other interesting nugget, okay? And I didn't even know this, and Kyle brought this to me prior to the show. So this is actually from Deadline. According to those in the know, it was Patty Jenkins who walked away after receiving notes on the treatment she submitted to the studio. Apparently, her 3-poke witch had her character arc problems, which rivaled that of Wonder Woman 84, which, despite being impacted at the box office for the worse by closed New York City and Los Angeles theaters during COVID and a studio HBO Max day-and date plan, which was a disaster, which panned out at 58% on Rotten Tomatoes and not a rave fans at B+ cinema score, which the first one got an A. One rival studio executive observed the potential problem with the current DC setup of having a filmmaker like Gunn provide notes to an established filmmaker like Patty Jenkins. However, we hear that Warner Brothers Motion Pictures, Michael DeLuca, and Pan Abbey had concerns about the treatment before Safran and Gunn weighed in. The group provided notes. Jenkins fought back and defended her vision that the threequels characters' arcs were solid. Jenkins was given the chance for another pass, but opted to walk away. while the optics of Wonder Woman 3 not going forward post the killing of Batgirl provides optics for the studio. It was never anyone's intention to be sexist. The hope for another Wonder Woman exists. The question is whether Gadot wants to make it. And judging from the actress's tweet 2 days ago before the news that came out, it sounds like the actress wants to stay on board. Combined, they've made almost $1 billion. And so, I mean, the question then becomes, why wouldn't you make more? So, let's unpack everything. Number one, what did you, when you heard the news that they were not making Wonder Woman 3, what were your immediate thoughts?
I was devastated, David. I was devastated. And I think I am in the minority who enjoyed Wonder Woman 1984. I don't think that it's as good as the first Wonder Woman, but I still had fun with it. I do wish they released it in theaters. At least they re-released it in theaters because they didn't exactly give us much of a shot by releasing it at the end of 2020 and then dropping it on HBO Max. But I think the unfortunate thing is I love the Wonder Woman franchise. I think that Patty Jenkins has done a great job, especially with the first Wonder Woman. And Gal Gadot is my Wonder Woman. I actually personally feel really connected to her because Gal Gadot is one of the only Jewish superheroes out there. I mean, Diana isn't Jewish; she's from Themyscira, but knowing that Gal Gadot, who plays her, it gives me someone that I can look up to, and there's a lot of things there that I just really love seeing in Wonder Woman. But it's been a project that's kind of been a bit mired in controversy / uncertainty, whether it's because of the fact that, Patty Jenkins, she was given the chance to make a Star Wars film called Rogue Squadron. It was going to come out, I believe, next year. And they ended up just canning the project. We haven't heard a thing about it, and it looked like they moved it away from their priorities. One of the many Star Wars films that they ended up kind of shelving. And then she was also going to do a Cleopatra movie with Gal Gadot as Cleopatra. And that film is still moving forward. The director is Carrie Skoglund, I think. She did The Falcon and Winter Soldier. And unfortunately, Patty Jenkins had to leave because she was kind of stuck in between working on Wonder Woman 3 and she had all these other projects, and Wonder Woman 3 was the film that she seemed to stick with. She left Rogue Squadron, she left Cleopatra, but Wonder Woman 3 was the project she was, I think, the most attached to. And unfortunately, based on what you just read, it looked like she was so attached to it that when they asked her to rewrite it and maybe turn in another draft, she refused and walked away. I think what's really sad about this is that I love the idea of a director that gets a trilogy of movies. Sam Raimi got that with Spider-Man. Christopher Nolan got that with the Dark Knight trilogy. Peter Jackson got that with Lord of the Rings, but that is technically one movie they shot back to back. But there's always I love the idea of a consistency, and it's sad to hear that if they do make a Wonder Woman 3, it won't have Patty Jenkins, and that would be weird. But at the end of the day, if you look at Thor, Taika Waititi came in and did a great movie in Thor Ragnarok, and you do have situations where movies aren't directed, a trilogy isn't directed by the same director. Look at even Star Wars. George Lucas didn't direct all those original trilogy films, so you can still maybe turn a great product. And the one thing I do hope, because with Wonder Woman 1984, one of the biggest issues with that movie that I had with it was the fact that some of the screenplay was just all over the place. And it looks like, based on this Deadline article, the same thing was happening with Wonder Woman 3. And if they may have just saved the franchise by, letting Patty go and maybe looking for another writer, that might actually be in its benefit. And as someone that, even though I did enjoy Wonder Woman 1984, a lot of people did not. And to see maybe someone new come in and tell another Wonder Woman story, it might be a good thing. And also, Gal Gadot seems to still want to play her. And in that same article, they mention that they've spoken with like Warner Brothers, and they have an intention to continue with Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. And that's something that I was kind of shocked to hear, because a lot of the article yesterday, the Hollywood Reporter article that was released, it looked like almost all the actors were gone. But to still have Gal Gadot there as Wonder Woman, who knows? It could mean that Henry Cavill could still be Superman. It could mean that Jason Momoa could still be Aquaman. But also in this Deadline article, they mentioned how The Flash and Aquaman 2's performance at the box office, I think, is going to determine whether they do continue those franchises. So, yeah.
I mean, so many things to unpack here. Number one, I think that, I guess my question is this. And by the way, so let me first of all say this. For me, I mean, obviously the pandemic was brutal for those 2 years. And I mean, we're still, there's still problems out there. Wonder Woman 1984 never got the actual release it should have to 3,000, 3,100 theaters. And this is at the very beginning of the pandemic, and people probably don't remember this, but Warner Brothers paid out the bonus to Patty Jenkins and Gal Gadot because their projections were that this was going to be a better movie financially for Warner Brothers than Wonder Woman. Which, by the way, Wonder Woman made $854 million worldwide.
Yeah.
That's huge. That's number one. So, I mean, they were number two. I gotta respect, and by the way, this is why I read the whole James Gunn tweet, because, I mean, there were just segments in there. So, I mean, when you're hearing it from the horse's mouth, we can actually say what's what. Number two, I gotta believe that, I guess my question is this. If they knew that they had 1984, why wouldn't Warner Brothers at the time, and they said, okay, we want you to go ahead and make this, why wouldn't they say, where do you see her going from here? I wonder if they presented plans, if Patty Jenkins hadn't presented some of the notes and everything else, or maybe a possible rough screenplay to the former guys at Warner Brothers and said, here's what I have for a Wonder Woman 3 treatment. Because that would be fascinating to find out. If they said no, even though they were going ahead with 1984 at the time, if they said no, we don't like this, go revise it, okay, fine. And so that in itself brings up other questions.
What was interesting about that is that when they announced Wonder Woman 3, it was, I think, almost a marketing move in itself, because Wonder Woman 1984 had just come out on HBO Max and in theaters, and it no doubt obviously broke the record for HBO Max, because at the time there was nothing else that would, and it broke the record for views. Everyone watched it at home. I watched it at home, and I believe it was only a couple days later, David. It wasn't even like, sometimes they announce sequels like a month or 2 months later. Like they only announced a sequel. They announced Wonder Woman 3 like a couple days later, saying Patty Jenkins is coming back for Wonder Woman 3. And a lot of people surmised it was solely for the purpose of marketing 1984 that they announced this. And I think that's another reason, because even like in the article, it talks about how Michael DeLuca and Pam, I think Paula Abdi, they had voiced their concerns about the screenplay. So it wasn't like, they were like, okay, let's get this movie out, let's do this. It almost feels like they greenlit the third film, but when they saw the reception of 1984 and they saw kind of the way DC was looking, they started to have, I think, more reservations about it.
Yeah. And by the way, let's face it. I mean, as I said before, nobody's ever going to know how much 1984 would have made in theaters.
Yeah.
We won't, because of day and date, okay? Sequels don't usually do as well, but let's say it makes $500, $600 million. That's still a success. And then they go ahead with Wonder Woman 3. And so the final thing I'll say is this. I have all of the admiration in the world for Patty Jenkins. Because as a filmmaker, as somebody who's creative, as somebody that moves forward, she had a vision. And at the same time, she stood up for what she believed in. And they said, she presented it to him. They said, no, we don't like it. Bye-bye. And the thing is, people forget about this too. That 2 years ago when this whole pandemic began, okay, Gal Gadot and Patty Jenkins got a nice fat bonus from Warner Brothers. Because, look, here was the success of 1984, or here was the success of Wonder Woman. We're projecting that it will do even more money. I will say one last thing about her. I feel so sorry for her. Gal's going to be fine. She'll go on and work and whatever else. But this is the second or third project that she has had taken away from her.
Uh-huh.
Okay? She had the Cleopatra one taken away, even though it might still be going forward. Okay? But it's probably in limbo right now. She had the Rogue Squadron one taken away from her, which, by the way, anybody who saw that 30-second clip of her skating down the runway and stopping right in front of a life-size X-Wing, she looked the happiest, she was one of the most happiest people you'd ever see in your life, because her father was a fighter pilot. So she got to make this, and it wasn't about the Skywalker saga. It was a brand new story. And now she has this taken away from her. And so, but like I said before, I have all of the admiration in the world for her because she stood up for what she believed in. What do you guys think about this? Did Warner Brothers make the right move by just flushing this down the toilet? Do you think Patty Jenkins made the right move from walking away? What do you guys think? Leave us your thoughts down in the comments.